One of the things you're going to need to familiarize yourself with is really the benefits of colonial life. And so benefits only matter if they have a personal attachment to somebody. And so a lot of times the mistake we make as representatives of an organization or a product is we're promoting or we're selling a product or a service that the other person doesn't want, or that the other person doesn't understand the value of the benefit. And so a lot of times what the phrase that I want you to think about is, well, when you make a statement, the very next statement should be, and the benefit to you is dot dot dot. And so it starts with, well, let me ask you a question. So what's going to happen all the time is you're going to be making phone calls. We're trying to set appointments. We're trying to get somebody's attention in 5 seconds on the phone. Or maybe you're doing a drop and you're in person live and you walk in and somebody's just not really giving you the time of day. And so what you're trying to do then is grab their attention. So one of the key phrases that you can say is, well, let me ask you a question. So maybe you walk in, you say, hello, can you tell me who I speak to regarding your employee benefits? Who makes the decisions? And right away they're like, we don't need it. So what do? We don't want it. We already have medical. It's abrupt and you're taken back. One of the best things to do is, you don't punch back. You just kind of, step to the side and kind of dodge the bullet there a second and say, well, let me ask you a question. It really doesn't even matter what they just said. And so you're trying to put a question back to them that you think is a benefit that they might like. Now, that's the trick. You don't know. This is one of the reasons why when we're doing phone calls, we want to take notes, because each call we're gathering information, and maybe after about the fourth call, you do know they do not have medical coverage. You do know that there are a lot of gals that work there. You do know that these gals are young. And so maybe something like, a pregnancy plan is good for them, or this company really likes pets. And so normally we don't lead the gate with product or coverage like that. But after a while, after getting to know them, we may throw that out there and say, and then the benefit to you is. So there are a few that I would like to go over, and you really need to have, kind of your let me ask you this questions ready to go. One of my favorites, and the first one I go to really to try to find out where they're at, is, well, let me ask you this. If there was one benefit that you would like that you don't currently have, what would that be? You understand that that question will work really for everybody, because there is no company, there's no individual that has complete 100% coverage for everything in life. Now, we may not offer that product or service, but we want to ask that question. And then, if we do have something along those lines, then we can specifically address that issue and then follow it up with, and the benefit to you is this. But here's some general ones, they're, bullets or arrows, whatever way you want to call them, that you kind of have, ready to go so that you can fire them off at the right moment. But the first one is, well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you a question. Do your employees, are they paycheck to paycheck? And so that's an important question for you to ask, because really we're there representing the employees, right? And so many owners have kind of forgotten that, they're in a completely different situation than their employees, and their employees are living paycheck to paycheck. And believe it or not, it affects the boss. And so, it puts the boss in a very difficult, the owner in a very difficult position when, one of their employees gets sick or injured off the job and can't work for 2 or 3 months. And all of a sudden they feel the pressure like, well, I like him and we're friends and I want to pay him and I want to cover him, even though he's not working. And he can't afford to pay his bills because he's paycheck to paycheck. And so the benefit to you in using a Colonial Life product is you no longer have to worry about being paycheck to paycheck. In fact, now we're going to insure your paycheck. It's paycheck protection. One of the other questions you can ask is, well, let me ask you a question. Do you think most of your employees have, $3,000 to $5,000 in the bank? Kind of goes back to that paycheck to paycheck, but in a different way. Because and the reason why we ask this question is, especially if we know that they have medical coverage, but they have a high deductible. And so again, maybe there's a mandate, and the company or the owner, HR director knows that, well, okay, we have coverage, but it's not very good. And actually, 80% of their workforce can't even really afford to use the benefits they have because the deductible is too high. And so unless they had, $3,000 in the bank or $2,000 in the bank to cover the deductible, they're not going to be able to use it. The other issue is, what if they were sick or injured and couldn't work for 3 to 6 months? Do they have $5,000 in the bank to pay for their car, pay for their rent, pay for their groceries, and their expenses outside of medical? And so a very important question to ask. And of course, obviously, the benefit to having an accident or short-term disability plan is, again, your paycheck and your lifestyle is protected. You're not going to get your car taken away or kicked out of your house because you do have coverage. Another question to ask is, well, let me ask you a question. Do you have gaps in your major medical? And so there may be, hospital indemnity, how long, you can stay. There may be elimination periods. There may be co-insurance, 80, in the 80/20 or the 70/30. There may be co-pays with every visit that's involved. There may be high deductibles. And so really we want to get our arms around what their policy and plan is, because that will allow us to then kind of fill in those gaps. And so the benefit to them is that we can actually come alongside and help bolster their medical plan or coverage, and even lower a lot of their expenses. And so we provide that benefit for them. Another great question for us to ask is, well, let me ask you a question. What if you were sick or injured off the job? We understand that if you're sick or injured on the job, that maybe you would have an L&I claim. Keep in mind, L&I might take 3 months to process that claim and make sure all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted and everything, where we're paying out instantaneously. We can pay out as fast as 24 hours. And so if one was sick or injured on or off the job, so maybe you have your weekend warriors. I work with a lot of construction companies and repair shops, and these guys are going off and ATVing and four-wheeling or playing sports on the weekends, or they're even picking up extra work and they get hurt. Well, now the L&I with their company isn't going to kick in, and they're on their own. And so the benefit to you in having a policy with us that covers you while you're off the job is you're always covered. Very important, especially when you're a blue-collar type of worker that depends on your hands and being physically fit and strong in order to accomplish the job. Another one that people don't think about is, well, let me ask you this. And I think about this whenever I go into a beauty salon and I see a bunch of young ladies. They're at that point of time where they're still having children, or they're getting ready to have children. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, they may know that they are getting ready to start a family. And so we have policies that will protect them. Could you afford to pay the bills if you weren't able to come into work for 6 to 8 weeks, which is kind of, the normal, stay for gals, once they've had a baby. And so we have plans that will cover them for that time frame. So very, very good policy for them to have. Another good question to ask is, well, let me ask you a question. Do you have, a workforce or people who maybe they're younger, newly married with children? Couple of things. One is our accident policies include all their children. And so that's a phenomenal benefit for them to have is because, kids are always getting hurt. In fact, I just had my nephew just broke his wrist yesterday, and my niece in the same family, she broke her arm. And these are kids that are under 5 years old. Accidents happen. One of the other issues is, young men all of a sudden wake up one day and they're married and they have two children and they don't have a life insurance policy. And so it's very important for them to be reminded and then, given some options. And so there's a great benefit for them to start that life insurance policy while they're young, while they're healthy, get those premiums really, really low. It's one of the best things that they can do. Another question. Let me ask you a question. Do you have coverage? This is one that we kind of forget, but again, a lot of times they don't have any coverage. And so if they don't have any coverage, then we have a lot of solutions. Not only do we have our paid products, we have our MD Live, we have our wellness card. These are complimentary programs that we can provide for free. And so there's a lot of questions that we can ask. We can ask a question. Let me ask you a question. Are you having a hard time retaining your current workforce? The workforce is very competitive and people are leaving because the benefits package is better somewhere else. Let me ask you a question. Is it hard for you to get new employees? Again, the benefits are becoming one of those critical competitive issues in hiring and retaining customers. Let me ask you a question, and I ran into this when I was CEO of a Christian school district. How's morale? Typically at a Christian nonprofit organization, their pay is low. They don't have great benefits or any benefits. They don't have a retirement program, and so morale's low. They're doing twice as much the work for a quarter of the price. And so how's morale? This is a way that we can help increase morale. And so just by asking and phrasing it that way, let me ask you a question, and the benefit to you are some simple and easy ways. Now, again, you're probably not going to use all of these in one visit or one phone call, but you're going to have to learn these one by one, and then be ready to be flexible. It's okay to kind of have your go-tos. We all have a couple of our go-tos, but you're also going to have to be ready to be flexible. And so know your questions, and really these are the reasons why they should say yes to not only giving us 10 or 15 minutes, but ultimately setting up an enrollment.